Welcome to the Jehovah's Witness Pursue Peace Convention Cringeathon, generously sponsored by my Patreons, where we'll take a look at the Saturday afternoon program. I'm saying Saturday afternoon, but they probably didn't record this on a Saturday afternoon, and most Jehovah's Witnesses probably won't take their Saturday afternoon off to watch the convention. This is just a clear example of Jehovah's Witnesses' inability to change things, even when it doesn't make sense to keep things the same. And after skipping the traditional and equally useless music videos, we start the convention with our favorite, A Symposium. This one will teach us the things we need to remove from our personalities for the sake of keeping the congregation united.
You were taught to put away the old personality that conforms to your former course of conduct and that is being corrupted according to its deceptive desires. So we had to put away the old personality. But it's one thing to put it away, it's something else to keep it away. And that's why in the very next verse, verse 23, Paul encourages us to do this. And you should continue to be made new in your dominant mental attitude. That's so important to keep it away, because the old personality has traits that can become peace wreckers.
Jehovah's Witnesses are required to get rid of any aspect of their personality that isn't approved by the religion. That includes the way you talk, the haircuts you can get, and, judging from what we're about to see, being terrible at acting. It's amazing that we're just a couple of minutes in and we're already getting thrown all this culty talk at us, almost as if they knew no one new is actually listening to these videos.
What is inappropriate boasting? Basically, it's self-praise, and the Bible condemns self-praise. Notice Proverbs chapter 27 and verse 2. Let someone else praise you, and not your own mouth, others, and not your own lips. Self-praise is an evidence of pride, and that causes one to elevate himself above others.
The first item of this symposium is basically
self-praise. And the Bible condemns self-praise.
This sounds okay until you realize the Jehovah's Witnesses leadership are guilty of the same thing. Just remember that they've started to continuously thank not to God, not to Jesus, but to the governing body for certain provisions or blessings as you watch this.
It happened in the first century. Paul had to write the Corinthian congregation about the dissensions that they were having, the lack of peace they were experiencing. Why? Well, some of the congregation were puffed up in pride about themselves or other men, such as Paul, Apollos, Cephas. They were giving too much attention to themselves and to other men. Well, how could that happen today?
It could happen if we thank humans, like the governing body, instead of God, right?
Well, let's imagine a group of brothers talking, and one in the group says, with Jehovah's help and with diligent prayer and effort, I finally got a Bible study. But right away, another one in the group proudly declares, I have 4 Bible studies, 2 are attending meetings, and 1 will soon be baptized. Could such a statement be a peace wrecker?
No, it wouldn't, because this is obviously fictional and would never actually happen. No one has that many Bible studies. Most Jehovah's Witnesses struggle to find the one.
And wouldn't you not agree that the world is filled with self-praise? Even on their social media, we see this. Some of the material that people post on the social media is designed to make the one appear very important. And it is a showy display of their accomplishments, material possessions, or their expensive vacations that they enjoyed. In other words, it's all about, look at me. Well, we want to avoid getting caught up in the world spirit of self-promotion that wrecks peace.
And of course, this talk couldn't end without accusing the world of doing what the leadership is doing. But now, let's start watching what we all came to see, the drama.
Put away from yourselves every kind of malicious bitterness, anger, wrath, screaming and abusive speech, as well as everything injurious. Did anyone start the day thinking, I believe I'll show malicious bitterness to my brother today. Of course not. And yet the potential is there, isn't it?
This is how the drama starts because the people at Bethel writing this have no imagination. So they have to start the drama shown in this speech with people listening to another speech. And since they have no imagination, we're about to be introduced to our main characters via zoom in and guitar chords.
But genuine affection fights peace wreckers. And affection grows when we really know our brothers and sisters well. We remember their joys and pain, their selfless zeal, how they came to love Jehovah, and what they endure.
I'll get back as soon as I can. Love you. Bye. Oh no.
Lovely. Okay. We can go to it. There's a really nice one.
Hey, love. So sorry. Gotta run.
Okay, I'll ring you about this week.
Thanks. Love you both.
See you. The afternoon will look better.
Nana.
Hello, Hayley, darling. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's not too bad. I got this.
Oh,
How are you, though?
thank you. I'm so sorry.
Oh, poor thing. Let me clear this up. Oh, Nana, it's Sunday today, isn't it? This one. It's felt like such a long day.
It has fun.
Thanks, Nana. Sleep well. Hello everyone, Hayley from Janua Design here, helping you to be effortlessly elegant.
I want to welcome my new followers and thank everyone for subscribing to this channel. So first up, I got this gorgeous earring and necklace set. And as you can see, the first is I've done it this nude tone. And that's great because it
Can you
goes with
believe
any
her?
outfit that you can wear.
Hayley's business feed.
But what makes this set really special, giving you that understated elegance look. If you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe button below. Because as you know,
When you look this good, you feel great.
You can just tell this was all made by men. They need a female character for this drama, so the female character is into makeup and accessories. I bet it was either makeup tutorials or cooking videos. And of course, since the script calls for a single sister, the brother who's casting the drama simps out and casts the most attractive single sister he can possibly find. Then they put another sister as the antagonist because she's gossipy. Although no one talks like a real person in Jehovah's Witness dramas, women are consistently badly written because the writers clearly do not have any idea of how women think or talk. Now, obviously, there's nothing wrong with what Hayley did here, but according to Jehovah's Witnesses, she's not completely out of the hook.
Well, this video reminds us to think about how our words and our actions may appear to others. We do not want to boast about ourselves, but give all credit to Jehovah for the good that we can do. Well, we, like David, should boast in Jehovah. The Apostle Paul encouraged us to do that at 1 Corinthians 1:31. The one who boasts, let him boast in Jehovah. What does that mean? It means that we boast in the privilege of knowing the true God and of being able to be used by him to accomplish his will.
All 17 minutes, or however long his speech was, can easily be condensed into those clips. You have to worry about how you come across, and you cannot boast about anything except being a Jehovah's Witness. Let's just skip to Seth Maya to see what he has to say in his unique accent before we get to see another snippet of the drama.
What is envy? Do you know? It's important that we be able to identify the symptoms of envy. Why? Because envy is an expression of hatred. It's an enemy of peace. And if left unchecked, it can result in spiritual death. As described in the Bible, envy has two symptoms. The first is probably more familiar. An envious person wants what someone else has. It's the second symptom that makes envy especially dangerous. An envious person not only wants what someone else has, he doesn't want the other person to have it.
This is how Seth opens his talk, and he's about to do what basically all these speeches do. Give you the definition of a word and twisting the Bible to get their own meaning. Because did you know that people who hated Jesus were secretly envious of him?
Here's an example. In the 1st century, Jewish religious leaders envied Jesus because Jesus was much appreciated by the common people. Jesus dealt with people, including lowly ones, in a way that dignified them. As a result, he was appreciated. The religious leaders envied him, but rather than adjusting their own way of dealing with people, they attacked Jesus verbally in an effort to destroy his good reputation. They spread malicious slander. Not only did they want what Jesus had, they didn't want Jesus to have it. No wonder envy is listed as one of the works of the flesh in Galatians chapter 5, verse 21. It's a dangerous quality that we need to avoid.
So yeah, this reading is nowhere in the Bible, but he's going to twist the Bible yet again to remind everyone what God thinks of anyone being disrespectful to the governing body.
Can envy disrupt the peace of a congregation? Consider the examples of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. They envied Moses and Aaron in the congregation of Israel. How did that envy manifest itself? Well, they began to speak negatively, critically of Jehovah's representatives, even accusing Moses of playing the prince and lifting himself up above the others. They forgot that Jehovah had put Moses and Aaron in their positions of responsibility. How did Jehovah react to that manifestation of envy? He destroyed those 3 men and all who supported them. For a time, the congregation was robbed of its peace, and the account certainly provides some insight into Jehovah's view of envy.
Yeah, he views those people worth of destruction. After this culty chat, we can finally find out what's happening with the ladies in the drama and how this all fits in with envy.
Really? Bad news?
She's a sweetie. Reminds me, I want to speak to her about a necklace.
You too? You don't think she's showing off?
No.
Everyone thinks she's Miss Wonderful. She's starting to agree.
Is this just about Hayley?
Seems it's all about Hayley.
Your tea's getting cold.
And you're changing the subject.
No, but you've brought this up before. What is it? You're friends. You pioneer together.
Yeah, and that's why I'm concerned.
Concern is good. But is there just a little bit of envy in there?
So Emily, the antagonist, is constantly getting herself triggered by checking Hayley's profile. This is already an insane scenario, but weirdly enough, this isn't a far-fetched scenario for a Jehovah's Witness. If you've never been a Jehovah's Witness, you'd see that what this lady's doing wrong is caring about someone else this much. She doesn't even come across as a balanced person. But for Jehovah's Witnesses, what Emily's doing wrong is something completely different. You may have heard how this was framed as being concerned for her.
You're friends. You pioneer together.
Yeah, and that's why I'm concerned.
That's because Jehovah's Witnesses are supposed to care this much about other people's business. They're supposed to keep everyone in check and make sure they stop following anyone who isn't behaving up to Jehovah's standards. So what Emily's doing here is routine for Jehovah's Witnesses. Emily here is wrong because somehow she's being driven by envy. We don't get confirmation of this. The elderly lady clearly just assumes she's being jealous, and it just doesn't get disproven. Now, how could she have known that Emily was jealous? Well, did I tell you that Emily is a woman and that Hayley is another woman and Hayley's more attractive than her? Seriously, to the writers, the motivations are clear as water.
A humble person looks out for others. He doesn't feel that he deserves more than others. Contentment. A content person is satisfied with what he has. He doesn't compare his privilege or his possession with another person's privilege or possession. He's content. Humility, contentment. With Jehovah's help, we can cultivate these beautiful qualities, qualities that leave no room for envy. And in doing so, we promote peace, inner peace, peace in our family, and peace in the congregation. And you can be sure that Jehovah appreciates that.
That's how Seth concludes his talk, and now we move on to Gaius Glaucantine, who wants to talk about lying.
What comes to your mind when you hear the word dishonesty? Maybe you think of Satan, the father of the lie. Or Ananias and his wife comes to your mind. They lost their lives because of lying.
Well, no, that's not exactly who I'm thinking of, but let's make sure I'm thinking of the right person.
Dishonesty includes, and please take note of this definition, intentionally leading someone to a wrong conclusion. For example, by twisting the truth or by providing only certain details, we endanger our peace with others.
Yeah, so with this in mind, let's just see who I'm thinking of.
Your church accept corporal punishment of children?
Our church accepts the family arrangement and expects that parents have the responsibility to discipline and raise their children.
That doesn't answer my question. Do you accept corporal punishment?
In our literature, I think you'll see time and time again, we've endeavored to explain that here, discipline is referring to more a mental point of view.
I regret to tell you, you're still not answering my question. Do you accept corporal punishment?
No.
You don't?
Not personally, no. And not as an organisation. We don't encourage it.
And so, for example, if they had become inactive or sought to fade without formally dissociating, and the elders came to visit and found them celebrating Christmas or a birthday, they would be found to be in transgression of the rules, would they not?
That is not my understanding. But again, as I said, it's not my field. That goes into policy with regard to those type of things. But from my personal experience, that's not the case.
Well, Mr. You say it's not your field, but you remember the governing body, which is responsible, as you've said, for the whole field, and you've been a member for 10 years, and all the committees are responsible to and accountable to the governing body. So if someone hasn't disassociated but has sought merely to become inactive or to fade, they're then still subject to the organisation's discipline and rules.
If they acknowledge being one of Jehovah's Witnesses.
And if they do the contrary, which is to say they're not one of Jehovah's Witnesses, the effect of that is disassociation.
That's if they decide to go down that course.
Freedom from the organisation on the one hand and friends, family and social network on the other.
I thought I made it quite clear that I don't agree with that supposition.
Well,
you see, are we talking about a gross sin that's been committed or someone who just wants to leave Jehovah's Witnesses? Let me clarify it. If someone no longer wants to be an active Jehovah's Witness and they're not in the community viewed as a Jehovah's Witness, we do not have a so-called spiritual police force to go and handle that.
You're disagreeing on the example of what they do wrong. And that's not my point. My point is they may do nothing wrong, but they're still subject to the rules of the organisation in the event that at some point they do something wrong.
I will agree with that, but I don't agree with the sweeping statement they only have the two choices. Well, that was the point I was disagreeing with.
Well, it's right then, isn't it? Because if they don't want to be subject to the discipline and rules of the organisation, then they have to leave by actively dissociating. Isn't that the truth?
That's if they definitely don't want to be, yes. But there are some that do not want to make that active move.
Well, the result then is they're faced with the choice between the freedom from the organisation on the one hand and having to lose their family and friends and social network on the other.
That's how you would like to put it, Mr. Stewart, but I thought I'm trying to say that there are those, some of whom I have heard of, that just fade away and they're not actively Jehovah's Witnesses.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone be so deceptive and lie so frequently under oath than Jeffrey Jackson. I think the videos speak for themselves and make...
Trust is the result of spending time together, speaking the truth with one another. We trust people that act unselfishly and do not use crooked speech, as the Bible puts it. If someone deceived us only once or was dishonest in another way, we might start to question everything they say. One single act of dishonesty may be enough. It can ruin their reputation. As bad as this is, dishonesty has the potential to create even greater damage. Dishonesty can be compared with a highly contagious virus. Dishonesty breeds dishonesty. People who have contact with deceitful, dishonest person are in danger of being infected. Dishonesty might not only wreck one relationship, but multiple relationships, putting the unity and peace of the whole group at risk.
Now that Gages gave us a definition of a word along with an unbiblical teaching, we can finally keep watching the drama right where it cut off.
You pioneer together.
I know, and that's why I'm concerned.
Concern is good, but is there just a little bit of envy in there?
I thought you would understand.
I think I understand your feelings.
Not about Hayley.
I haven't seen all her posts. There's nothing immoral, is there?
No.
Good. That's not like her. Now, if it's a case of her being more careful how she comes across, that's another matter. Why don't you talk to her?
Maybe.
Emily, you are a beautiful spiritual sister. You know, for years I had a bad habit comparing myself to others. My own insecurity hurt me and my closest friends.
Again, we can see that Emily is clearly wrong not for obsessively checking someone's posts, but because she's secretly envious or something. And Emily is going to do something even worse, poisoning her good husband, almost like this was all written by the same people who wrote the speech.
So you don't think I should have spoken to Celia?
Oh, I'm glad you've asked Celia about it. Someone you trust. What did she say?
Well, she definitely understands how I feel.
Good. And about Hayley's posts?
Well, she hasn't seen everything she has out there. She did say that Hayley needs to be more careful how she comes across.
What did she suggest?
That I should tell her that she needs to stop, but I'm too worked up.
Look. If Celia agrees that Hayley's doing something she shouldn't, you should talk to her. You'll find the right time.
Thanks for understanding. I'm hungry. Can you say the prayer?
Sure. Jehovah, we would like to praise you for your generosity and kindness.
So far, Emily hasn't told her husband any lies. She just hasn't gotten to everything yet. She clearly needs time to process everything. And that's obviously wrong.
Did you notice how Emily just heard what she wanted to hear? In talking to her husband, Jake, she painted an incomplete picture. She did not relate that Celia had no opinion about the social media posts of Hayley. And contrary to what she told her husband, Celia did not encourage her to tell Hayley to stop. Our brothers and sisters deserve the truth. But Emily didn't relate that, did she? She was dishonest, something that can have a damaging effect, as we will see later.
Again, it didn't seem like Emily was done with the conversation, and the husband gave her a piece of very generic and conditional advice based on what he knew so far.
If it's a case of her being more careful how she comes across, that's another matter. Why don't you talk to her?
What did she suggest?
That I should tell her that she needs to stop, but I'm too worked up.
If Celia agrees that Hayley's doing something she shouldn't, you should talk to her.
I think this really shows how far-fetched the scenarios Jehovah's Witnesses build up in their heads really are. And you may not notice it when someone is just telling you that to you in a speech, but the notion of infecting people with dishonesty is so far-fetched that they can't even get their own dramatization to portray it convincingly.
Did you notice why we put away deceit and speak truth with one another? Paul says, because we are members belonging to one another. In other words, Paul reminds us of the fact that dishonesty affects others, our brothers, our relationship with them. Now, what are the consequences of dishonesty? As we've seen in the case of Laban and Jacob, it will disrupt the peace with others. And since Jehovah hates dishonesty, it will also disrupt our peace with Jehovah. On the other hand, what are the consequences of honesty? While dishonesty might seem in the moment to be the easier way out, in the long run, honesty will enable us to have good friends. They want to enjoy peace as well, and therefore they are also searching for someone they can trust. In this way, we are like body members belonging to one another. And even more importantly, we will enjoy a good conscience, peace with God.
I don't know whether to talk about how Gages just told Jehovah's Witnesses to be as united as a human body, or make fun of him for pointing up when he talks about God, like
Jehovah.
Like God lives up in the heavens of a flat earth. You point up. Let's just skip to the next talk and see if they're also following the same formula of redefining a word and then twisting the Bible before we get to continue watching the drama.
Do you gossip? No? Well, whenever we share any news about others, that is a form of gossip. Because we are interested in others, we might say, I'm really concerned about Brother Smith's health. Or, did you hear about Sister Brown's experience in the ministry? Is this type of gossip harmful? Generally not.
Gossiping is talking about other people behind their backs about things that are not confirmed to be true. That's what makes it gossiping. What Patrick described here isn't called gossiping. It's just called talking about other people. But let's see his Bible backing for it.
Listen to this old Jewish story. A man went about town, slandering the town's wise man. Later, the malicious gossiper realized his wrong and went to the wise man and asked for his forgiveness. He offered to do whatever was needed to make amends. The wise man made one request. He told the gossiper to take a feather pillow, cut it open, and scatter the feathers to the wind. Well, the gossiper was puzzled by this request, but he did as instructed. Then he returned to the wise man. Am I now forgiven? He asked. First, go and gather all the feathers, the wise man responded. But how can I? The wind has already scattered them. The wise man replied, It is as difficult to repair the damage done by your words as it is to recover the feathers. Yes, once spoken, hurtful words cannot be retrieved. Let's not scatter feathers in the wind.
Yeah, why use the Bible when Patrick saw this meme on Facebook and thought he could use that instead? It's weird because the only other religion that seems to use this story on their sermons is the Catholic religion, with Catholic websites dedicated to this story. To me, this just disproves the Bible as a whole. If you need stories to support your argument, then this isn't a Bible-based talk. It's just Patrick sharing the same thing your aunt shares on Facebook when she's beefing with her neighbor.
You believe that? Especially as a pioneer. What kind of example is she setting?
Has Emily stopped following her?
No, not yet, but she probably will. Alistair, what do you think?
About what?
Hayley's posts on Quick Post.
Is there a problem?
Emily's told me. They're all just, look at me. My clothes, my hair, my makeup. And even Celia agrees with her.
Well, it's very easy to take things out of context on social media. I know that I've done that and realised later that I was wrong.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Listen, I don't want to pull you away, but if you have a minute, would you mind giving me a hand with these boxes?
Sure.
Thanks for your help.
No problem.
Jake, back in the hall, I know you were just expressing concern, but here's something to consider. This principle is one of my favourites. It's found in Proverbs chapter 18 and verse 17.
The first to state his case seems right until the other party comes and cross-examines him. I'm not sure I understand.
It just means that sometimes we only hear one side of a story. And until we personally hear both, it's best not to draw any conclusions. And even then, if it's something negative, we wouldn't want to spread it, any more than we want something spread about ourselves.
I hadn't considered that. Thanks. I'm going to apologise to Harry and Marie. And have Emily talk directly to Hayley.
Good idea.
Here we see yet again that what Jehovah's Witnesses are supposed to learn from this drama is different from what an outsider would think the lesson to be. An outsider would think that the lesson here is do not lie and do not talk badly about other people behind their backs. But that's not what Jehovah's Witnesses are meant to see. Here, what the brother is doing wrong is reporting that Hayley is showing off without confirming it himself first. The issue isn't that he's talking badly about this sister behind her back. The issue is that the sister isn't actually showing off. If she actually had been showing off, then this guy could and should let other Jehovah's Witnesses know so they can do what their religion dictates and stop following her, as it's shown in the drama itself.
Has Emily stopped following her?
No, not yet.
And we see very clearly how lying and deception is simply baked into their religion. Lying is totally okay as long as it's for a greater good. That's why no Jehovah's Witness involved in the production, distribution, and consumption of this material will notice or care that the mature brother literally lies in the dramatization about being truthful.
I don't want to pull you away, but if you have a minute, would you mind giving me a hand with these boxes?
Here, the elder lies because that's what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to make this issue his issue, diffuse the situation, and correct the brother in private to ensure everyone is behaving the way they're supposed to. And if he needs to lie a little bit to ensure compliance from other Jehovah's Witnesses, then so be it. Lying isn't what's wrong here. Telling other people to soft shun and block this pioneer isn't what's wrong here. What's wrong is that the characters aren't doing those things for the right reasons. However, there's a kernel of good advice hidden in the drama.
Proverbs chapter 18 and verse 17.
The first to state his case seems right until the other party comes and cross-examines him.
I've been meaning to make a video called The Bible Verse Jehovah's Witnesses Don't Quote or something like that, because this verse can be used to wake up Jehovah's Witnesses. As Harrison Cawthor from the channel The Truth Hurts beautifully explains in this video, who, by the way, was just in our podcast Babylon the Great. Have you plugged in the podcast Babylon the Great? You can download Babylon the Great if you want. Like, you can download it right now.
Proverbs 18:17 states, "The first to state his case seems right until the other party comes and cross-examines him." In other words, don't take what one person or one organisation claims to be true as fact without first listening to other viewpoints on the topic. If that person or organisation is in fact telling the truth, then it will remain true no matter how much it is cross-examined and scrutinised. Is that the Jehovah's Witness approach? No. Not only are debates heavily discouraged, but they believe that their leadership is God's sole channel of communication on earth, and that everything else is the product of Satan and his wicked system of things.
When I saw this video, I was really surprised because I had never, ever seen this Bible verse. So I went to jw.org and I tried to look up instances where they use this verse. And I was only able to find one or two very rare instances of them using this otherwise obvious and useful advice. So at one point, I was almost convinced that this verse was actively avoided by the organization because it's such a clear reason to listen to apostates. Most of us want Jehovah's Witnesses to cross-examine our arguments, and this is a Bible verse inviting people to do just that. But witnesses are forbidden from following this advice when it comes to anything even remotely critical of their organization. But unfortunately, this aspect of the verse will likely fly over people's heads when they listen to this convention.
So what should you do? Without taking on an air of self-righteousness, you could simply say, let's change the subject. Or, I don't really feel comfortable talking about this. After all, she is not here to defend herself. And if we find that a brother or sister likes to gossip, we may find it easier to avoid harmful gossip by stopping close association with that person.
See, soft shunning is okay if they aren't doing what their religion expects them to do. But let's move on to the most boring governing body member who I guarantee Jehovah's Witnesses are only pretending to listen while they wait to see yet another drama snippet.
Satan is the main peace wrecker. The scriptures tell us that he is driven by great anger. His anger is malicious and uncontrolled. Would any sound-minded, God-fearing person allow himself to reflect Satan's vicious anger? Of course not. That is why all true servants of God are determined to put away uncontrolled anger.
So his point is that Satan is angry and you wouldn't want to be like Satan, would you? But obviously this isn't just about being angry. Let's see how far Kenneth stretches the definition of being angry to fit his narrative.
Uncontrolled anger harms both the angry person as well as those around him. We read at Proverbs 29:22 that an angry person stirs up strife, adding that he commits many transgressions. One of these many sins is abusive speech. We must work to show restraint when speaking with workmates, with strangers in the ministry, with our brothers and sisters in the congregation, and with our family members. Bad feelings must be controlled. Abusive speech, ridicule, contempt, and hateful anger are wrong. Giving vent to such feelings can destroy precious friendships with other people and with Jehovah.
So we started with uncontrolled anger, and now Kenneth is saying that that actually means you need to control your thoughts and get rid of negative ones. If it wasn't because we're about to see the juiciest part of the drama, I'd say they're not even trying anymore.
Yes, Nana?
Don't forget eggs, dear.
No, I didn't forget.
Are you sure, love?
No, I won't forget.
Thank you so much.
Okay, love you. Bye. No.
Haley, finally, I've caught you. Do you have a minute?
Hi, Emily. Can we talk later? I'm really struggling this morning.
Do you know, it's just, we've been so busy and I've been waiting for the right moment. I'd really just like to address it.
Okay, what's up?
It's just that I've noticed your posts lately on Quick Posts.
What about them?
Well, do you really think there's something that a pioneer should be posting?
What are you talking about?
Some people might think you're bragging.
Some people? What people? It's a business account. I've got to show off my products.
I know, I get that. It's just, I don't know, it could feel like you're drawing a little too much attention to yourself.
Who would think like that? You?
No, not just me. Celia felt the same.
You spoke to Celia about this?
I didn't want to upset you. Jake said that I needed to say...
Jake said everyone thinks my posts are inappropriate.
Not everyone, Haley. That's not what I'm saying at all.
You are such... You're just such a gossip!
I'm not gossiping. I'm just trying to help you if you would just listen to me.
You're just jealous to me. Oh, yeah, listen to this. And I expected more from you.
Haley, what's she talking about?
Gossiping. About my posts. Are you that lonely that you've got nothing better to do?
Haley? Wait, please.
Were you left feeling a bit tense?
Well, not after you deflated the whole tension. But seriously, Jehovah's Witnesses are getting really good at manufacturing emotions. They've done all the basic stuff. They filmed everything with a handheld camera, in long shots to add visual tension. They even add a little sound effect similar to the sound used to block offensive language on TV to suggest the use of offensive language without actually having it.
You are such.
For people who have never been to film school, this is pretty great. That being said, the theme here continues. Emily isn't wrong because she's trying to correct what someone else is saying. As we saw, you can even lie to get there. Emily is wrong because Haley isn't actually at fault. And Emily only thinks she's at fault because she's envy or something. But let's listen to Kenneth end this speech with a little bit more thought control and soft shunning.
First, we need to recognize the danger of uncontrolled anger. Proverbs 25:28 states that as a city broken through without a wall is the man who cannot control his temper. Strong city walls were vital in ancient times. Without them, a city would quickly fall to invaders. Likewise, so will those who cannot control their temper. By losing control, they make themselves vulnerable to the invasion of wrong thoughts that can cause them to hurt themselves and others. Uncontrolled anger can do just that. A word of caution, though. To succeed in doing our part, we must choose our associates wisely. We could undermine all of our good work and Jehovah's help in controlling our anger if we choose associates who are arrogant, opinionated, or quick to become angry. Regarding someone who is disposed to rage, Proverbs chapter 22, verse 25 warns, "Never learn his ways."
And if you're looking forward to the resolution of this whole Emily situation, you'll have to wait. I think that the leadership knows that this is the only bit of the convention a Jehovah's Witness will actually pay attention to, so they've jammed the video in between to make you wait. Now, they call this video a documentary, but this is like when Lloyd Evans calls any video that he films outside a documentary. I don't think you have a documentary just because you're showing a compilation of footage mixed with people not talking directly to the camera. Them calling those videos documentaries would be like me calling my videos cartoons just because I'm a drawing. Could I? Maybe, but we can all agree it's just not accurate. But stretching the truth until it's inaccurate seems to be the theme of this fakehumentary.
Peace must be sought above all.
Our military forces are committed to peace.
We have chosen peace.
Our wish, our prayer is for peace.
We yearn for peace. We pray for peace.
For thousands of years, humans have tried to find peace. Peace as individuals. Peace as families. Peace for the entire human race.
We want to lay the foundation of peace for generations to come. We want to do the hard work now so our children and our grandchildren can grow up in a peaceful world.
The future we want. Opportunity and security for our families, a rising standard of living, a sustainable, peaceful planet for our kids. All that is within our reach.
Yet, despite humans' best efforts, peace has been elusive.
This is how the fakehumentary opens. It's basically saying people have been looking for peace and yet we still don't have world peace. Leaving aside that virtually every politician has at some point promised peace because, that's how they get the votes. The point here is that they have all failed because, wars still happen. But Do they? Let's take a look at the facts. They've shown footage from the First World War till today. Here are the deaths caused by wars. Here's another representation divided by the conflicts that caused them. While we don't have world peace now, peace has definitely increased in the time span they show. There has never been a moment in time with fewer deaths caused by war than today. That's why Jehovah's Witnesses need to use mob footage mixed with old war videos, because they have to stretch the definition of war to entail basically any confrontation between two groups. But since the last days are supposed to be marked by war, Jehovah's Witnesses have to twist the facts to scaremonger followers and make them believe these times are worse than ever.
Man's efforts to bring about lasting peace have failed, time and time again.
This isn't surprising to us. Jeremiah 10:23 tells us, "It does not belong to man to direct his step." Humans were simply not designed to rule themselves.
Good health, safety, overall well-being, these are becoming harder to find as we move further into what the Bible refers to as the last days.
See how this is a fake documentary? All these guys are from the writing department, meaning they're the ones in charge of writing speeches and dramas. They are the ones writing this thing, but instead of having some guy say it on the platform, like everything else they write, they film themselves saying it to someone off camera. That way, they get to look like professionals and show up in the convention video. So after this brilliant introduction, this fakeometry devolves even further. First, they'll tell you that the only way to achieve peace right now is by, and you'll never guess this one, following what they have to say. And then they pretend this is a fake history documentary by giving you examples of people following what God had to say in chronological order.
Understanding how these accounts relate to Jehovah's purpose to bring peace by means of his messianic kingdom gives us confidence that his purpose never fails, and he will support and guide us on into the future. One of Jehovah's prophets who learned this lesson firsthand was Jonah. Jonah lived in the 9th century BCE. Jehovah assigned Jonah to go to Nineveh, a city of the Assyrian Empire. Based on what he knew about Nineveh, Jonah considered this to be an intimidating and threatening assignment.
The Assyrians are known as fierce warriors, and Nineveh itself is later described as a city of bloodshed.
So we start with Jonah, and right off the bat, we can see Jehovah's Witnesses propaganda all over this story. This story of a man being swollen by a fish for 3 days so Jonah can use it for transportation not only did not happen, it's straight up stolen from Pinocchio. But since Jehovah's Witnesses are literalists who believe everything in the Bible to be a historical fact, Jonah was like any other Jehovah's Witness. When Jehovah's Witnesses are tasked to do something for their religion, like becoming a pioneer, a Bethelite, or an elder, they call it an assignment. And just like them, Jonah had the assignment of going to preach to Nineveh.
In an attempt to find peace, Jonah decides to go far away from Nineveh and boards a boat headed for Tarshish. Tarshish is generally associated with modern-day Spain. So from Israel, this is the complete opposite direction of Nineveh. Jonah found anything but peace.
By the gods. Furl the sail!
Now this was no ordinary storm. It was so severe that the ship was in danger of being wrecked.
Captain! We're taking on too much water! The storm is for the gods!
The crew cried out to their gods, but Jonah knew the true source of the storm. And now he accepts personal responsibility for the situation.
Lift me up and throw me into the sea, and the sea will calm down for you. For I know that it's because of me that this violent storm has come upon you.
This narrative is especially hard to buy when you see it dramatized with bad actors and voices inserting other meanings into the story. If you think the Jonah dramatization looked familiar, that's because this is from a previous convention. This fakementary is just clips of previous dramas put together in what Jehovah's Witnesses believe to be chronological order, because they think all of these stories happened, even if they don't make any sense.
Oh, Jehovah, out of the depths of the grave, I cried to you for help. Please hear my voice. What I have vowed, I will pay.
Jonah could have reasoned that this was the end of his assignment as Jehovah's prophet.
This experience was Jehovah first bullying Jonah into going to a city because Jehovah wanted that city to do whatever he wanted, or he would kill them all. This story paints God in a particularly bad light if you remember that the only reason why Israel was supposed to obey Jehovah was because Jehovah had a covenant with that group of people. That covenant did not include the Assyrians, so Jehovah had no right to expect they would serve him. In the Bible, the story ends with Jonah choosing a good view to see the destructions of the Assyrians and throwing a tantrum when he realizes there will be no destruction because the Assyrians have decided to repent and follow Jehovah for some reason. Jehovah then kills Jonah's plan to make him cry and teach him about empathy or something. And if you're wondering why I'm telling you this instead of letting you see it all play it out in the drama, that's because the drama decided that all of that didn't happen, and instead this happened.
Jonah learned a valuable lesson from this experience. By originally running away from Nineveh, he chose to trust in himself rather than putting his trust in Jehovah.
Are you Jonah?
I am.
Mommy says he saved us.
No, Jehovah saved you. I was just a messenger.
Yeah, so instead of actually showing what happens in the Bible, Jehovah's Witnesses just decide that since this is all fiction, who cares if they change the ending in their remake?
Although the Ninevites were spared because they repented, that's true. Assyria later returned to its evil, wicked ways. About a century after Jonah's judgment message, King Sennacherib of Assyria brought his armies against the cities of Judah, including the city he wanted most, Jerusalem.
King Hezekiah of Judah was an outstanding king who held fast to Jehovah. From the beginning of his reign, he proved to be zealous for true worship, not only in Judah, but in all of Israel. Hezekiah had done so much to stand up for pure worship. Yet now he is faced with the prospect of a siege against Jerusalem by Sennacherib's armies.
My brothers, we must remember that Jehovah is fully able to rescue us just as he has in times past.
Hezekiah! Will you not even now face the facts? We are trapped. The Assyrians are at our gate, and you cling to the belief that nothing bad will happen. You will destroy everything you so hope to preserve. The temple, Jerusalem, our very lives.
Shebna, I'm not blind to the dangers that we face. I too am afraid. But if Jehovah allows Jerusalem to fall, so be it. How can we give up what belongs to Jehovah?
So as a man of faith, Hezekiah focused on Jehovah's ability to save his people despite Sennacherib's continued advances toward Jerusalem.
No, he didn't. The story is pretty much about Hezekiah rolling over and telling the Assyrian king that he would pay them anything to not be invaded. He also repairs the walls of the city and prepares his soldiers for battle. Then Hezekiah sims for the Assyrian king yet again and just sends him all his gold and his silver, hoping to be spared. If this sounds pathetic to you, the Assyrians would agree, since the king ends up sending some guys just to mock Hezekiah publicly and in Hebrew, so everyone knew what a coward he was. When Hezekiah gets wind about this, he literally changes his outfit to match his mood and just breaks down. And it's only now that Jehovah's prophet Isaiah is supposed to show up to let Hezekiah know that everything's gonna be fine.
Instead of trusting in himself, he continued to look for Jehovah as the source of true peace, even as an attack seemed imminent. And Jehovah again showed just how insignificant human rulers are in comparison to him.
Yeah, so once the Assyrians finally go to pillage Jerusalem, many of them died, causing a retreat. According to Asian historian Herodotus, the army had an issue with mice, and it's believed that some mice or rat-borne disease defeated the army. Others have theorized it was an outbreak of cholera because the city walls were blocking the water access. The Bible says it was an angel committing revenge against the king for mocking Jehovah. But instead of killing the king, the angel only killed the soldiers who were just following orders and had nothing to do with the battle taking place. I guess we will never know which one of those is true.
Yet in spite of all this, the people still thought that they could serve Jehovah and Baal. So after becoming king, Josiah started a campaign against idolatry.
I've seen this cheaper.
Take it or leave it.
We start here.
No!
This is what we will do to every false god in the land.
He tore down altars used for false worship, sacred poles, images, and statues. He was intent on cleansing the land of idolatry. Now, he showed remarkable courage to stand up for true worship at a time when few were doing so.
This is what Jehovah's Witnesses want. This king is the good guy in the story because he destroyed idols and killed anyone who didn't follow his religion. That's why Jehovah's Witnesses are so into the Old Testament, because the Old Testament shows the kind of God they believe in. An intolerant God that destroyed everyone who didn't accept his rulership at a moment's notice, and who will do it again one last time to everyone who isn't an exemplary Jehovah's Witness.
Josiah did so much to restore pure worship. That is why we love him. Yet the people's heart condition remained polluted, so the nation required severe discipline. Jeremiah prophesied a conquest of the Babylonians against Judah.
All this land will be reduced to ruins, and this land and its inhabitants will have to serve the king of Babylon for 70 years.
Daniel himself may have heard Jeremiah speak those words, and he certainly saw it come true as he and his family were exiled to Babylon. Talk about peace being interrupted. Daniel was a young Judean prince taken from his homeland and separated from his family. But being chosen to receive special training in the court of King Nebuchadnezzar, that presented another set of challenges. The entire way of Babylonian life was contrary to what Daniel knew growing up in Judah. But Daniel was determined not to pollute himself with foods Jehovah would not approve of. And Jehovah blessed Daniel's determination to be faithful, as he was selected to serve as one of King Nebuchadnezzar's wise men.
Now it's time to rewatch the Daniel drama. According to every biblical historian, the book of Daniel is a forgery, a book written after the facts to retroactively insert this Daniel narrative into historical events. But again, to a literalist like a Jehovah's Witness, the book of Daniel is not only historical fact, but it contains prophecy for our modern days.
One night, King Nebuchadnezzar had a strange dream.
O king, may you live on forever.
relayed the dream to your servants.
We will tell the interpretation.
No. If you don't make the dream known to me, along with the interpretation, you'll be dismembered. And your houses will be turned to public latrines.
There is not a man on earth who can do what the king demands. What the king is asking is difficult. No one exists who can tell this to the king except the gods.
Seize them. Kill them!
Jira.
You're in danger.
Why? What happened?
I didn't hear everything, but the wise men angered the king. Everyone's to be executed by dawn.
Bring Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah here. I'll try to learn more.
Oh, Jehovah, surely you didn't bring us here just to die. What will people say? We told them that you are the God of the heavens, the only God who can reveal secrets. Please, vindicate yourself. Saw an immense image. That image was standing in front of you. You yourself are the head of gold. But after you, another kingdom will rise, inferior to you. Then another kingdom. A third one of copper that will rule over the whole earth. As for the fourth kingdom, it will be strong like iron. The kingdom will be divided, and as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom will be partly strong and partly fragile.
Now, here's the interesting thing. Some of the prophecies that Daniel recorded applied not only to the future of the Babylonian Empire, but also outline world events to our day and beyond. And these events are being fulfilled right before our very eyes.
Yes, what an interesting part that Daniel prophesies about the United States, because that's what Jehovah's Witnesses believe the feet of the statue to represent. Honestly, the whole prophecy deserves its own video, but suffice to say, the whole book of Daniel is a forgery that doesn't mention the Anglo-American power, or whatever that may be. Instead, we can start the next stop, where we finally get to see the aftermath of Emily confronting Haley because envy.
This series of talks will help us to pursue peace in 4 ways. By not quickly taking offense, by apologizing, by forgiving freely, and by using our gift of speech wisely. Let's consider our first way to pursue peace. Avoid quickly taking offense. Now, because we are imperfect, we might misjudge others and quickly take offense. Notice that we say quickly take offense. That's an important word. We need to avoid jumping to conclusions quickly before we actually have the facts.
Yes, whatever. Can we watch a drama already?
And I expected more from you. Haley, what are you talking about? Gossiping. About my posts. Are you that lonely that you've got nothing better to do? Haley? Wait, please. I don't know what's happening. Did you talk to Emily about my posts? Yes, we did. So you gossiped about me? No, I looked up to you. You're supposed to be the mature one, and you're just like Emily, busy running your mouth.
Hayley! Look, I can see you're upset. But trust me, this is a huge misunderstanding. I love you. I would never, ever say anything behind your back. So please, calm down.
Sometimes I just feel so alone. Between Nana and work. And then knowing all of you are talking about me.
I promise, that's not what happened. You're just really tired and overwhelmed. So why don't we just slow things down a little? You know, meetings always make me feel better, even on my worst days. Why don't we go inside, clean up a little, enjoy the program together? Then afterwards, we can all talk. I promise, it'll be okay.
Hayley really was upset. She'd already concluded that she was being gossiped about by everyone.
She was being gossiped about by everyone. We saw at least 6 people involved in her business already. I love how despite Hayley feeling all down, she still has to go to the meeting because that's what you do if you feel down. Or if you feel happy because then you don't have any excuse. Or when you feel angry because you'll be calm. Basically everything means you need to be at the meetings.
Well, besides taking time to think things through, we also need to remember that it is Jehovah's opinion of us that matters the most. Now, that's an important point, especially when we deal with misunderstandings or false accusations. So when falsely accused, or we have a misunderstanding that we cannot seem to clear up, it is of great comfort for us to know that Jehovah was there that day and saw the whole thing.
This is the exact kind of rhetoric Jehovah's Witnesses use to not report CSA cases to the authorities. There is no point in dragging Jehovah's name through the mud if Jehovah saw everything and he'll make it right in Armageddon soon, remember? Because of how the feet of clay and iron represent Biden leading the United States?
I am so sorry. It's my fault. Please forgive me. No matter how we phrase it, it can be difficult to apologize. Why is that so challenging? There are many reasons. We may fear confrontation, blame, or rejection. Perhaps we feel embarrassed and we're too proud to apologize. We may reason, apologizing will not undo the blunder I've already made. And it may even be that we are angry.
This is Ralph Waldo's main point, that you should apologize. I could make the same point I made already in an earlier Cringeathon of this same convention about the leadership not apologizing, but instead of repeating myself here, can I just say something positive and confess to all of you that Ralph is my favorite speaker? Seriously, I mean, he dresses very nicely, he's charming, and he looks like a kind of guy with a good sense of humor. I mean, not everything has to be negative, right? I don't know, I just think Ralph is the kind of guy who gives great hugs, is all I'm saying.
I don't know how this happened. But Hayley, I'm sorry. It hurts me to see you so upset.
I can't believe you two.
First, what you heard was not what I said.
Well, I thought that's how you felt. And even if I got that part wrong, all this drama...
Now stop. Come on, girls. Hayley, come closer. Love is patient and kind. It's not jealous. It doesn't become provoked, even when things become difficult. So what are we going to do?
I just thought of it. No. I'm sorry, Haley. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have judged you so harshly. I shouldn't have judged you at all. And I'm sorry for dragging you into this by twisting what you said.
It's okay. Things happen. I've been on both ends.
I should never have spoken that way to you, Celia. I mean, to either of you. Got to get home to Nan.
I'll call you tomorrow.
Bye.
This is yet another example of Jehovah's Witnesses telling their followers that you are supposed to be in everyone's businesses, but only if it's to make sure they're compliant with the rules. Cecilia barely had anything to do with the argument. The main argument was between Emily and Haley. But instead of letting them resolve their issue by themselves, Cecilia just takes it upon herself to not only fix things with Haley, but force Haley and Emily to make peace as if she's their mother and they've been naughty children.
We want to take the initiative to approach our brother or sister. We may need to acknowledge their hurt feelings. We may also need to ask, what can I do to make amends? Often, a sincere apology is all that is needed. When the Apostle Paul heard that the Christians in Corinth were taking fellow servants of God to secular courts over personal differences, he said, "Why do you not rather let yourself be wronged? Why do you not rather let yourself be defrauded?" The principle is clear. Peace among fellow believers is more important than proving who is right and who is wrong.
Yet again, more rhetoric to not take your brother to court, even if it's about CSA cases. That's how the Australian Royal Commission found that out of 1,000 known abusers in the past 50 years, not one was reported to the police. Because why don't you let yourself be defrauded instead of making Jehovah look bad?
It's a simple fact that to be at peace with others, we must be willing to forgive. Please notice two examples. A father and his teenage daughter didn't get along. Minor disagreements often developed into shouting matches. Finally, the tension got so bad that the daughter was asked to leave the house. Eventually, she recognized that she was at fault and asked for her father's forgiveness. But instead of overlooking her mistakes, her father rejected her efforts. He was unwilling to extend forgiveness to his own daughter. Now let's contrast that with another example. A blameless man was condemned to die for a crime he didn't commit. Shortly before he died, the innocent man stated, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Those words of Jesus are recorded at Luke chapter 23, verse 34. And he may have been referring to the Roman soldiers who drove the nails into his hands and feet and who didn't know who he really was. Or Jesus may have had in mind some in the crowd who demanded his execution but would later exercise faith in him.
So this talk started with some super weird shit right out of the gate. The first example is about a guy who can't figure how to talk to his teenage daughter, so he just kicks her out. To Jehovah's Witnesses, who are used to shun their children if they get disfellowshipped, this would totally be a normal example to use.
Are we like Jesus, willing to forgive others freely? Or at times, do we tend to be more like the man who was unwilling to forgive?
Yes, are we like Jesus, who may or may not have been asking for forgiveness for the people who put him there? Or are we like the totally reasonable but strict father depicted here? Let's just skip to the drama that somehow is still going.
Been thinking of you. Great broadcast. How did you like the new original song? Give us a call.
And so it's one of those truths transform your lives.
Maybe one day.
Yeah, definitely.
I wish you'd give it a rest.
Sorry?
Oh, nothing. Sorry. It's just Emily for the millionth time.
What's the problem, love?
There's no problem. It's just...
Difficult to let her back in. Not that simple.
Not that simple.
You want to forgive.
But not get burned again.
Keep in mind, a chance to forgive is a chance to imitate Jehovah. We wouldn't want to miss that opportunity.
I never thought about it like that.
Think back to a time when you wanted forgiveness. When it meant everything. How did it feel?
Just like Anna does as well. She really
You feel awful.
cares about you.
That you've let everyone down.
You're very precious.
And they forgive you. And suddenly everything's okay. Emily. Sorry I haven't been back to you. Have plans for tomorrow?
So now Emily, instead of stalking Haley to get triggered, is stalking Haley to hang out with her. Haley obviously doesn't want to do that, but here it's Haley who's in the wrong. You're supposed to be friends with everyone in the congregation, so Emily is acting exactly how she's supposed to act. And if Haley doesn't want to hang out with Emily, she apparently needs to think back to the past when she confessed something to the elders and used to wear a headband.
Why is it challenging to use our gift of speech wisely? Because something powerful constantly works against us. What is it? Imperfection. The tongue is powerful. It can do much good, but because of imperfection, it can also cause much harm.
This is how Garrett Lodge opens his talk about controlling what you say or something. I don't know, this speech is very boring. I did note, however, that he is the only one who reads his whole script directly off the teleprompter, even the Bible verses. This forces the editors to replace his image of reading with the Bible verse he's reading.
Notice how James described this in James chapter 3, verses 3 to 6 and verse 8. If we put bridles in the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we guide also their whole body.
I don't really know why this is happening. I just hope that Garrett is being lazy and not dealing with some health issues. We'll skip most of this boring talk as it's very lazily written. Most speakers have at least the decency to pretend that they aren't copying their speeches directly of a Watchtower article, but Garrett doesn't even bother to do that.
The Watchtower of September 15, 2006, page 21, paragraph 6, states, "In addition to human imperfection, family environment plays a role in the misuse of the tongue."
Instead, let's cut back to the final part of the drama, and let's see if these gossipy ladies have finally learned their lesson.
I don't know, but I love what you did with your niece, especially this set.
Oh, thanks. You've all given me so many great ideas.
Yeah, but you make them.
Yeah.
Okay, girls. Exactly.
Oh, this is my song.
Mine too.
You have a treasured place in Jehovah's house. He will help you out.
Stop.
I'll tell you who else thinks it's her song, but you better get your plugs handy. Veronica. Oh my goodness, she's in love with her own voice. Ever sit near her at the hall, like she's the only one that can sing. And
My first thought, oh no, here we go again. I've seen this movie before.
You don't think she's showing off?
Is this just about Hayley?
Seems it's all about Hayley.
Is there just a little bit of envy in there?
I've lived it.
If it's a case of her being more careful, how she comes across, that's another matter.
What did she suggest?
I should tell her that she needs to stop.
Can you believe that? Especially as a pioneer. What kind of example is she
How quickly it snowballs out of control.
Not what I'm saying at all. You are such. You that lonely that you've got nothing better to do. Hayley? How difficult it can be to unravel.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have judged you so harshly. I shouldn't have judged you at all.
A chance to forgive is a chance to imitate Jehovah. Think back to a time when you wanted forgiveness.
Has anyone ever tried talking to her about her singing?
You know what I love about Veronica? She's probably the most hospitable person I know. Always open house at her place. And can she cook? Have you tried her curry?
Yeah, I've tried it. It's so good. I really look forward to that. Yeah. I love that.
So, just in case you're an idiot, the drama ends up spelling out what every part of the drama means by showing you the videos you've just seen. Luckily, we're done with both the drama and Garrett, and we only have one speech left, given by audience favorite, David Splain.
When we think of unity, the words of Psalm 133:1 may come to mind. Let's read them. Now, the words aren't going to be on the screen, so let's look them up in the Bible. I'll give you a moment. That's Psalm 133 and verse 1. It says, "Look, how good and how pleasant it is for brothers to dwell together in unity." Well, we certainly agree with these words of David.
That's how David Splane opens his talk, and you can already tell it's going to be about the one thing all cults have in common: unity. And it's all Bible-based because David Splane is using this psalm, and his Bible says dwelling together instead of the more common living together. Why? Because these words were meant for the Israelites when they were living together, basically saying how nice it was when people were nice to their neighbors. But David Splane wants to read us yet another Bible verse that doesn't apply to Christians today.
Let's fast forward now to the first century. Unity is so important that it was on Jesus' mind on the night before he died. You remember, he prayed to his Father that his disciples might be one, just as he and the Father are one. Now that could have been a challenge. Why do we say that? From a human standpoint, there was no reason for Jesus' disciples to be united. Unlike the Israelites, they did not have a common ancestor. They did not have a common mother tongue, and they came from a variety of social backgrounds. Think of it. The first Christians were Jews or Jewish proselytes. Growing up, they were taught that Gentiles were unclean and they wouldn't even enter the home of a Gentile, let alone preach to one.
You can already see how David Splane is using complete fabrications to make this verse seem like it can apply today. He needs to fabricate stuff because the point he wants to make about everyone being united in thought doesn't appear in the Bible. But he's going to try his best to convince you otherwise.
Some had been highly educated in Athens, Alexandria, or some other center of worldly wisdom. Others had little formal education. Yet, when they accepted the truth, Christians became united and at peace with one another. The Apostle Paul wanted to help them to safeguard that bond of peace. Now that's the theme of our discussion this morning. And we're going to look at his words recorded at Ephesians chapter 4, verses 3 to 6. And we're going to focus in on a particular expression in these verses. This is Ephesians chapter 4. I'll give you a moment. Ephesians chapter 4. And we're going to read verses 3 to 6. Now, Paul is interested in unity here, so let's see how he frames his discussion. He says, earnestly endeavoring, so an effort is involved, earnestly endeavoring to maintain the oneness of the Spirit in the uniting bond of peace. One body there is, and one Spirit, just as you were called to the one hope of your calling. And then he emphasizes one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all.
So David just read this verse that says Christians should be united in their belief of the one Lord, referring to Jesus, one faith, one baptism, and one God. That's what Paul wants everyone to be united in believing. The meaning of this verse is so clear, so transparent, that David has to immediately distract everyone by plucking something out of context.
Now let's go back to verse 3 and look at the expression, the uniting bond of peace. So our discussion is safeguard the uniting bond of peace. Now the Study Bible has an interesting note on that expression. It tells us that the word translated uniting bond can also be translated ligament. Ligament. And it is translated ligament in other verses.
And just like that, the verse is no longer about Paul telling early Christians to believe in the one God and the one Lord. No, the verse is about how you today should be like a ligament with your fellow Christians. But hey, it's not like you have to be united in everything. You can make your own decisions in like two things.
To be united doesn't mean that we all have to like the same things or we all have to think the same on every subject. There's room for a variety of tastes and opinions. There's variety on this convention program. We don't all wear the same style of suit or have the same color of tie. What about you? What's your favorite color? Your favorite food? Your favorite pet? In Jehovah's organization, there are dog lovers and cat lovers, and not everyone likes the same breed of dog or cat. Have you ever visited someone who has a pet that he thinks is just adorable? You take one look at the animal and you wonder how anyone could love a face like that. Yet he does. People are different, and their pets are grateful for that. There's great variety among people. Even in the New World, perfect humans won't have the same personality, talents, and abilities. You've always wanted to play the violin? Don't think when you're perfect you'll just be able to pick up a violin and play. And there's no guarantee you'll be able to play in an orchestra.
He's so full of himself, especially when you realize he probably thinks he may be the prince in heaven in charge of the orchestra because he pretends to direct one every now and then.
In some cultures, there are large families. Conversation around the dinner table is loud. You can hardly hear yourself think. The children tease one another and don't hesitate to ask each other personal questions. The girls borrow each other's clothes, sometimes without asking. Some people would say that's wrong, but the girls see nothing wrong with it, and neither do their parents. In other cultures, family members are polite and courteous, but they don't talk much about their plans or their feelings. The parents don't often talk about their past because they value their privacy. Now, some who were raised that way tend to be rather strict with themselves and others. They have definite views of right and wrong. Borrow their clothes without asking, and they'll say, "That's stealing. I'm calling the elders." There are no gray areas with them.
This is hilarious because there are no gray areas with Jehovah's Witnesses. The only gray areas where you're allowed to actually decide for yourself are tiny, inconsequential things, like how you count the hours you spend preaching per month, or whether or not you want to go inside of a church, or what kind of blood fragments you're willing to get as a medical treatment, because obviously you wouldn't get an actual blood transfusion because then you get shunned by the religion. And this is one of those times where it feels like I'm joking or exaggerating about these things, but I'm not. David's speech is literally about these three things alone, and how you shouldn't judge others over these things and these things only.
If they're not careful, those who tend to be strict with themselves could impose their conscience on others. Now let's consider a familiar scenario. 4 publishers are working rural territory in a car group. Now each home is separated from the next by many miles or kilometers. At the first call, the driver and her companion get out and the other sisters stay in the car. They have no choice. There's no place to go. Now the householder has many questions, and a Bible study is started. It's noon when the 2 publishers return to the car. All smiles. You know what's coming next, don't you? One of the sisters in the back seat says, "Well, the 2 of us can't count any time this morning." What's she done? She's spoken for herself and for her companion, and unintentionally, she's imposed her own conscience on her friend. Now, if she doesn't want to count any time, that's her business. But it would be best if she kept her business to herself.
So, in this familiar scenario, 4 women go to preach in a car to remote territories where the houses are far apart from each other. But then it gets even more familiar when the couple who gets off the car actually strikes a conversation with the person in the house and start a Bible study right there and then, after spending hours talking about the Bible, apparently. And then the women return to the car, and you all just know what happens next, don't you? I don't think there's any video that shows just how misogynist and removed from reality the governing body is, more than David Splane just telling you this completely made-up story that never happens to anyone.
If you've ever visited a foreign country and gone on a guided tour, probably one of the things the tour guide wanted to show you was the architecture inside a church. Now, some brothers have no problem entering a church if it's part of a tour, because to them, it's no different from visiting a museum. Others, who were strong supporters of false religion, couldn't enter a church for any reason, not even to attend a wedding or a funeral. To them, it's just plain wrong. Consciences can differ in this respect, and we have to respect that. We have to acknowledge that. And we're going to expand on that idea in a moment.
So we finally get to the visiting a church thing, and now David is going to remind you just how judge-free you should be in this one instance.
We know what a judge does. He declares someone guilty or not guilty. That's not our job. Jehovah is the judge. If each of us concentrates on his own thinking and his own conscience, the peace and unity of the congregation will be preserved.
But that's not the case in anything else, is it? The Elder's Manual literally has a subheading preparing the elders to judge, and they judge based on whatever David and his pals decide is right and wrong. Jehovah isn't the judge, the elders are, and David and his pals decide the rules. Except in this one thing about visiting a church or not. In this case, you have freedom of choice. Somewhat.
Let's consider a scenario we touched on earlier, the matter of entering a church. Now, that may not be a problem where you live, but in some places, it's a real issue. And remember, these talks are for our worldwide brotherhood, so we're going to consider a subject that will be a real problem for many to overcome, and we hope that they will benefit from it. So here's the scenario. 2 different sisters are married to men who are not in the truth. Now, in both cases, the husband's mother has died. The funeral will be in a church. One sister decides to go. The other decides against it. The sister who decides to attend has considered that in that church, there will just be a talk by a clergyman. There'll be no congregation singing, congregation prayers, or religious gestures. She was never very religious anyway, so none of that would mean anything to her. And her husband and his family will be happy if she just sits quietly until it's over. Now, the second sister has a different set of circumstances. The service in that church involves participation by the congregation. She used to be an active member of that church, and she's afraid she'll do something she'll regret. Her husband's family get very emotional at funerals, and they're likely to make a scene if she doesn't participate. So, she respectfully tells her husband that her attendance could cause him embarrassment and declines to attend. You can see that each situation is different.
Jesus Christ, so here David is telling you why 2 people decide to act differently, but it's not because of their conscience, but because of their circumstances. And the circumstances that you should take into consideration are whether or not you'll have to participate, maybe do something you'll regret, and not the fact that your fucking mother-in-law is dead and your spouse wants you to be with them because they just lost their mom. To David's plain, that's not even worth talking about because this isn't really a conscience matter. If it were, then David's plain would just say, don't judge anyone who goes to a church for something. Instead, he just keeps telling believers how to choose and what to choose.
Now, we're going to discuss 4 questions that we might ask ourselves when we're called upon to make any difficult decision. And I will repeat the question, because if you're taking notes, you may want to write at least the question down. These are very, very good questions that we can ask ourselves before we make a difficult decision. Are you ready? Here's number 1. What will make Jehovah happy? I'll repeat that. What will make Jehovah happy? What are some scriptural principles a sister who's married to an unbeliever might consider when deciding whether to attend a funeral in a church? Can you think of some? What about 1 Peter 3, verse 1? Wives, be in subjection to your husbands. Jehovah is pleased when a Christian woman respects her husband, whether he's in the truth or not. But a wife's subjection is relative. She's dedicated to Jehovah, not to her husband. She's dedicated to Jehovah, not to her husband. So that's 1 Peter 3:1. What about Isaiah 52 and verse 11? touch nothing unclean. Keep yourselves clean. Under the Mosaic law, if someone so much as touched something unclean, he became unclean. Many brothers and sisters would find it very hard to sit quietly while a clergyman told lies about the condition of the dead. To them, it would be touching something unclean. Others might compare that to a young person in school sitting quietly while his teacher tells lies about the origin of life. If someone does decide to attend a funeral in a church, he or she should be absolutely determined not to participate in any religious ritual, whether singing hymns or so much as saying amen to a prayer that a clergyman offers. Remember the goal: to please Jehovah.
All of those little guidelines for something that supposedly is a conscience matter. And there's yet another thing Jehovah's Witnesses have to take into account when following their conscience.
Number two, how might my choice affect others? Have you got that? How might my choice affect others? Even in a family matter, such as attending a wedding or a funeral in a church which we may consider as a personal matter, we need to weigh the effect our decision could have on others. It could affect them in one of two ways. Now, the first is the obvious way. In some areas, if a witness even entered a church, his brothers and sisters would lose respect for him.
How would someone lose their respect of their brothers and sisters if brothers and sisters aren't supposed to judge him? David Splain wants to have it both ways. If in your congregation they're already against going to a church, then he wants it to stay it like that. And in congregations where people don't care about it, then he wants everyone to start noticing and make sure they follow the guidelines that he has come up with.
The Apostle Paul never worshipped idols. So, when meat that had been offered to an idol went up for sale at a meat market, it probably didn't bother Paul's conscience to buy it, because he knew that an idol is nothing. But some of his brothers had worshipped those very idols before coming into the truth. They could have felt guilty about eating that meat. To them, it would be like having a communion meal with an idol. The feelings of his brothers were important to Paul. He was willing to sacrifice his own rights for the sake of his brothers. Now, what do we know? We know that the Bible says to abstain from blood. But as you divide it into fractions, and the fractions get tinier and tinier, at what point does blood stop being blood? Each one will have to decide that for himself. Now, some might say, well, if it's a really, really tiny fraction, it doesn't bother me to take it. But others will say, it doesn't matter to me. If it's from blood, I don't want it. And their conscience also has to be respected.
Is that what Paul said? Because I distinctively remember that Paul, when talking about the meat to idols, told people to never care about it and not even ask where it came from. I guess for David it's convenient to ignore that part of the Bible, because if eating food to idols is a matter of conscience, then so is eating blood. The only part in the New Testament where the blood prohibition reappears is in Acts, and both times it's listed along with eating food sacrificed to idols as something people shouldn't do. Later on, Paul clarified to the Corinthians that they shouldn't even ask where the meat from the market came from, and that the only thing that mattered was that they weren't being jerks to people who didn't feel comfortable eating certain types of meat. But Jehovah's Witnesses are only allowed to get certain blood fractions, and only then it becomes a matter of conscience instead of a matter of disassociation and shunning.
So far, we've discussed the need to make Jehovah happy and to consider the feelings of our brothers. What's next? Number 3, have I asked for counsel? Have you got that? Have I asked for counsel? Now, maybe the elders haven't dealt with the exact situation we're facing, but they know a lot of people. They may know someone who has dealt with the situation before and seen how he handled it. Or they may know about the effect the decision had on others. For example, they might know how the congregation reacted the last time someone attended a wedding or a funeral in a church.
And if you thought after all of this, Jehovah's Witnesses are finally allowed to choose for themselves, well...
So, where are we? We make Jehovah happy. We consider the feelings of our brothers and sisters. We ask for counsel. Number 4. Did I take the time? Did I take the time to meditate prayerfully before making my decision? Did I take the time to... Your goal is to make Jehovah happy. So you wouldn't want to make your decision hastily and then ask Jehovah to bless it. We should ask Jehovah for guidance first, rather than asking him to bless a decision we've already made. Have you ever heard someone say, "That doesn't bother my conscience"? We might ask, how did he come to that conclusion? Did he follow the 4 steps we just mentioned? Did he do research to learn what makes Jehovah happy? Did he think about how others might be affected? Did he ask for counsel? And did he meditate prayerfully on his decision? Or is he just following his feelings? Following your feelings isn't the same as following a Bible-trained conscience. I'm going to repeat that. Following your feelings is not the same as following a Bible-trained conscience.
Yep, there's yet another layer you need to take into consideration before you're allowed to choose by yourself. Because as David's about to remind you, this isn't really about choosing what you want.
We might allow our emotions to get the better of us. For example, when a family member is disfellowshipped. If the person is living outside the home, we know that we should limit our association to necessary family business. Now, if the family was never very close, that might not be a problem. But suppose family ties are really strong. That can be a challenge. If we allow ourselves to be ruled by emotion rather than by scriptural principles, we could stretch the meaning of necessary family business to include almost any activity. The heart is treacherous.
I love how he closes this little segment reminding Jehovah's Witnesses of yet another issue where they are not allowed to choose by themselves. But note David's plain talk is done before he baselessly insults the members of a whole profession.
Now, sometimes medical doctors complain that their witness patients are inconsistent because we don't all have the same view of certain medical treatments. One witness patient accepts certain fractions or therapies, so the doctor figures he knows what Jehovah's Witnesses believe. But then the next patient comes along, and he rejects them all. The doctor is confused. Those doctors don't understand the role of the conscience. We shouldn't worry when medical professionals don't understand our differing viewpoints because we should be glad that we serve a God who dignifies us with the freedom to make many of our own decisions.
And finally, once you think David can't possibly keep stretching that verse about unity in faith, he finds one last chance to squeeze it in.
What about the elders? The elders take the lead in working together in unity. They should always speak with a united voice. If they don't, the congregation will sense that they're divided, and this will make the brothers and sisters uneasy. Any difference of opinion should be worked out in private while showing deep respect for one another. Just because someone disagrees with us doesn't make him a bad person. We have to understand that. And his difference of opinion may search us through. It may be something that we need to think about and consider. And we always consider that the other person may be right. What about us publishers? If we're having a hard time getting along with someone, rather than asking Jehovah to change him, we should ask Jehovah to mold us like the great potter he is. We should ask him to show us why he drew that person to the congregation. Remember what Jesus said, "No one comes to him unless the Father draws him." What does Jehovah see in that person that we aren't seeing?
And with that, luckily, David is finally done. And since we're not singing or praying together, that means the session is over. This was an insane convention. It wasn't that triggering or anything. It was just so crazy that it takes forever to get into everything. But thank you so much for watching, especially to my Patreons who help me out and allow me to make this content. I'll have a little giveaway for Patreon soon, and I'm already working on the Patreon chosen videos, so make sure you're subscribed to that so you don't miss that. You can also support me with a one-time donation for a cup of coffee or something. I'm a freelancer, so every dollar I get is a dollar I don't have to spend time working elsewhere to get. I hope you enjoyed it. We have only one day left in this convention, and I cannot wait to see what they have saved us for last.